The false self is not the bad self. It is the innocent self that was doing the best that they could at that time under very abnormal conditions. That's where we were born. We were born to a highly dysfunctional and abnormal world that our parents, our teachers, the world around us told us was perfectly normal. So we believed them. Therefore, we felt as if we were abnormal, not the world around us. We took it all as if it were us that was somehow wrong. So here we've got this quandary of we need to connect within, but we don't want to go through that perceived darkness unless we can see that it's innocent, unless we can perceive of the possibility that we were misled. This is not to place the blame with another. This is rather to learn that that false self was doing the best that they could at the time. We as human beings are so much more innocent than we would ever dare to let ourselves see. We do things, even the bad things, out of such innocence. Because if you think about it, we were born to a world where we underwent a horrific trauma. And the trauma, the shared trauma for all humanity, is the trauma of being separate from God. It's the greatest trauma that we can endure. And then we were told to put a smile on our face and pretend that everything's okay. So we did. So we were denied the opportunity to acknowledge what we really felt, which as children, for the most part, was really spot on, really correct. We were denied those opportunities. So now we can start to see, wow, maybe as a human species, even though we as a collective may have behaved really badly, all of that's been done in an innocence. And the innocence is that we were responding from a collective trauma. So now we can invite compassion for the self and for the false self. Now we can begin to no longer fight against ourselves, but to embrace and accept ourselves. Okay, now we've got a passage in. Now we can walk through what appears to be all of our fears, all of our perceived darknesses. And then we can move into the territory of reclaiming the heart, literal heart of who we are as an infinite being of love. Because the infinite being of love that you are lives inside of you and is alive in every heartbeat. It pulses through your body. So in other words, it's not separate from you. It's just unseen, unacknowledged, and unclaimed. But the infinite self, when we allow ourselves to truly connect to the heart within and come into that portal, we discover, I was never separate. Revelation. I was never separate from God. This is what the collective will get to realize. I was never separate from God or from self or from my nature as an infinite being of love. So what I'm talking about is nothing short of instantaneous healing. And I know that people will hear the words instantaneous healing and say, whoa, you can't give people false hope. You can't tell people they can have instantaneous healing.
Yes, they can.
That is an instantaneous healing. That is. And yes, they can. And yes, you can.
Yeah. So just on the innocence part, that would be, I would suggest for perhaps folks that are listening to this, a huge, I would hope, relief, because that's why the law of karma or the law of cause and effect is in place to show us what we create and to be accountable for them. It's not a punishment. It's so that we understand what we're using those intentions to create, those imaginings, like you said, the boomerang effect, the cause and effect. And that is why we must not judge our fellows, because as my guides say, you do not judge the path another has chosen that you have not claimed for yourself. It's none of my business, your path or anybody else's path. What's my business is my path and my connection to source. So the innocence thing is huge, because you're right. It's doing the best you can. And that leads and opens the doorway to forgiveness. Forgive yourself and love yourself. And my guide also used something really nice, which I love, and that's forgive yourself for not being who you think you should be. And they shared that shoulds are always based on the ego and on historical choices. So we continue to but the ego self will claim in history, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, blah, 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 and the judgment and all that. But understanding that we're innocent, doing the best we can, opens the doorway for self-forgiveness. And if you can forgive yourself and love yourself first, you can forgive anybody for anything that they've done, because it's part of their soul's journey. And as I understand, in this earth soul, nothing is forbidden. All is beneficial in learning.
Yeah.
Which what you said about instantaneous healing.
Yeah.
As all the listeners probably know by now, I do teach opening the heart. I teach through science. And what we know is that science has proven when the heart opens, brain trauma can be healed. Brain trauma, significant PTSD or event-related stress injury, can be healed when the heart opens. And that's the part of the brain, the amygdala, that remembers the sounds, the smells, you know, all of those aspects of that experience that the brain still thinks is happening now, even though it was 15 years ago. But when that heart opens, that heals instantly, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's the gift that we give ourselves.
Yeah. Right? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And, you know, I think we've been taught that we've got to work really hard to heal. We've been taught, oh, you know, healing, it's going to take you years worth of therapy, and it's going to take you so much money and so much time, and it's such a hard path. And I'm not saying that it's an easy path, but I am saying that with your devotion to yourself, not to another, but with your devotion to yourself, healing is a much easier path than people expect it to be.
Yeah.
And it's paved with miracles, and you will see those miracles on a daily basis. There might be small miracles in your perception, but the miracles are there every single day when you allow yourself to walk that pathway into your own heart.
Mm-hmm.
So instantaneous healing is absolutely a possibility. It's our birthright. It's what we're stepping into. We're learning that life doesn't have to be hard. We're learning that life is simple. And interestingly enough, yesterday I put a little post on my group, and I'm looking for it right now because it was about exactly this thing. Can I read it to you quickly?
Absolutely, please do.
So it's pretty short, but this is what I wrote. I said, there is a world of difference between something being easy and being simple. Life is simple. It's not necessarily easy. Truth is simple. It's not always easy. Even ease is simple, but not necessarily easy, which is a total conundrum. But if we remember who we are infinite beings of love, an extension of the one true cosmic heart that created all of this. So we are individuated aspects of God. When we remember that, then we realize how truly masterful we are, and we then realize that we don't need ease, because we are a higher level being. We just haven't realized it. We are a masterful being. We just haven't realized it. And our ultimate job is to be here to remember the truth of who we are, to realize that it is simple. Some days it is easy. Other days it's not easy. It's always simple, and it's always attainable. And if we keep our eye on the ultimate prize, which is the connection to self, and we keep orientating ourselves to walk that path, no matter how many times we might get distracted, because it's easy to get distracted, and we come back to walk that path, the path of connection to self, connection to heart, we can find ourselves in blissful states of awareness that we thought we might only have access to on the other side of the veil. In other words, once we died, we thought, no, you know, that's the kind of stuff that happens there. Further to your point, Paula, about the brain and about the healing of the brain. When I first started as a spiritual teacher. One of the first things, and I didn't even know why I was teaching, I didn't even know at the time why it was so important, but I knew it was. One of the first things I taught people to do was to relax. And people would come with amazing stories. Stories like, I don't have time to relax. Stories like, I can't let my guard down. I've got to be on my game. I've got to be on the A game all the time. There's no space in my world for relaxation. Over the years, people realized, oh, maybe I actually do need to relax. Maybe stress is actually killing me. And maybe it's the root of all of my unhappiness. So perhaps there's something to this. And there is. Because when we learn to relax the physical body, so I'm talking about a physical level relaxation, it allows for the brain to heal, just as you were saying. It allows for the brain to come into its natural homeostasis, its natural balance point. And at that point, where both the body and the brain are, for want of a better word, relaxed, we could also use the word aligned. When both the body and the brain are in a state of homeostasis, the super consciousness, the higher consciousness, can then be expressed through the body. So we might think, oh, my wisdom is hidden from me, my intuition's not available to me, whatever it is, whatever a person might think is out of reach to themselves, it's so within their grasp. But learning to relax this physical vehicle of yours is paramount, so that the brain healing can follow, so that we can get both body and brain into an aligned position whereby the higher consciousness can now come through the body. Because do you know what? That's what the body was designed to do.
We're talking about what happens. We're talking about the brain and the body. And what I would like to add to that is, in science, so relaxing, I would suggest, is absolutely stage one. Like, it's the first step.
Yeah.
When you do it consciously connecting into the heart to create that coherence, which is the connection to spirit. So when you say going inside, that's not you connecting to your ego self because she's too focused on what everybody else is doing. When you connect within, that's your conscious intention to connect with your soul, your spirit. When you use conscious intention to go within, connecting with your spirit, using the heart, that creates coherence. And then to your point, when you add the brain, so when we're in coherence, what it does actually boosts the immune system by 50% when we're connected. So this is tied into spontaneous healing. Now, when we are in coherence with the brain and the heart, it's 150% improvement on your immune system's function. That's just using your conscious breath and your intention to connect with your spirit. And like you say, that opens, because now it's quiet in the inner world. Now we can hear the whisperings, the nudgings, the symbolism, the messages from our soul, from our spirit, who is very present in all of our activities on the planet. So when we dance, our soul dances, right? When we make love, our soul is loving with us, which becomes a very, very rich experience. So let's talk, if I can you explain to people in your words the difference between 3D, 4D, and 5D from a dimensional consciousness perspective, and what you allow into your reality as a sovereign being?
Okay. So 3D, in fact, all dimensions, we think of them as one place. We think of 3D as one place when it is not. Each dimension is divided into numerous octaves. So in other words, you get lower level third dimension, mid-level, upper level, and each of those levels is comprised of various steps or octaves within a dimension. So when I talk about this is what 3D is, it's a very general perspective, remembering that there's a lower and higher aspect to all that I'm saying. 3D as a whole.
So I'm just going to say musical notes on a scale. If people can think of musical notes on a scale, all the way up in every octave, all the way up, infinitely.
Yeah. So that's a perfect analogy. That's exactly what it is. 3D is where we come to experience duality and polarity, which is where we perceive of the world in opposites, very black or white, not black and white, not left and right, left or right. So it's the place where we choose to align ourselves with a polarized perspective, but then what we do is when we choose to align ourselves with a polarized perspective, we become righteous about that perspective. We need to defend that perspective, which we do from the ego principle of the 3D mind, which is to berate anybody who aligns with the opposite of our perception.
Or
So
doesn't agree with
when
you.
you perceive,
Or in
yeah,
simple
exactly.
terms, I'm judging you. I don't like you because you disagree with me. You like the color brown. I like the color gray. So you can't be in my world.
Yeah. So it's like from that 3D perspective, we have to make another wrong in order for ourselves to be right. That's how 3D works. We have to have judgment. That's the glue and the foundation of 3D, judgment. Without judgment, 3D doesn't exist. And remember that there's levels of it. So there's heavy judgment and there's milder judgment as we go up, but it's still fundamentally the same thing.
Right.
It's opposition.
And so
Now, as we,
sorry, we could almost say then that 3D is where the ego hangs out a lot. The ego's present. Okay.
Oh yeah. And it's a denial. 3D is also a denial of self. Because we're so immersed in the mistaken identity of the ego. In other words, we mistake ourselves for the ego. So we say things like, I am this kind of a person. I am that kind of a person. We describe our ego and then say, this is the truth of who I am. This is the totality of me. Instead of, this is an aspect of my behavior. So we confuse identity in 3D. But part of being immersed in 3D is that we don't know we've done that.
Right.
So we will defend to the death what we perceive to be who we are and how we think. Then we move into 4D. Now in 4D, especially the lower levels of 4D, you might think not much has changed. You might think lower level 4D is a lot like 3D, because it is. Lower level 4D, you've still got duality. You've still got polarity. As you move up into 4D, you have more acceptance and less judgment. Not no judgment, just less judgment. So 4D begins to include the concept of acceptance, and that begins to dilute or water down the concept of judgment. So now in 4D, we can have black and white, day and night, left and right.
And doesn't it not include 3D? 3D is very much me, I, me, what I need, what I want, me, right? When we move into 4D, that starts to open a little bit more as well, right? So these are really shifts in consciousness. We go 3D, 4D, 5D. It's the way we think. Yeah. So so the way that we're thinking is starting to expand, to be a little bit more inclusive, right? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So 4D, more inclusive, good word, and also more expansive. So now in 4D, we can begin to perceive, oh, I'm not just the body. I'm the energy field around the body that also begins to form part of the identity. So the word I is no longer limited to that separate small self, but begins to include the concept that we are a multidimensional thing. Even if we can't exactly embody that, we can at least be aware.
Now, I was just saying that when we get to 4D, we start to choose or be a lot more aware of what we love, what we're going to love. This is the beginning of the heart kind of starts rippling up and making itself a little bit more known. And to your point, aware of the energy and understanding how we're impacting people around us.
Yeah.
Would that be, okay. Please continue.
See, because we're not in resistance, 3D is very much about resistance. 4D is no longer as harsh a level of resistance, therefore more acceptance, that's where the heart opens. And when the heart opens, love happens, consciousness happens, etc. So 4D, I've always seen 4D as a bridge between 3 and 5. I don't see 4D as a destination, but a bridge. And in fact, I've got on YouTube videos about that, because what humanity may or may not have realized is towards the end of 2020, we moved into a 4D consciousness and a 4D embodiment. That means we stepped out of 3D as a collective in 2020 towards the end, November, December. So it meant that the world still looked very similar, because upper level 3D, lower level 4D, you can't really tell the difference necessarily. The difference is more how accessible 5D is now, because 5D from a 4D perspective is just there, but 5D from a 3D perspective is pretty far away.
Yeah.
So it made consciousness a lot more accessible and available. But nonetheless, we moved into a 4D embodiment at the end of 2020. So officially and technically, we are no longer a 3D race. Technically, we are a 4D race now. Which is why we're seeing the implosion of 3D. It's why we're seeing the radical crumbling of the old third dimensional systems. They must crumble. They can't, many people have said to me, couldn't we have just been ushered from 3D to 4D, like as in to say, there's the old world, now you're in the new world. And no, we need to have continuity, right? Because otherwise we're going to risk our sanity.
Yeah, humanity doesn't do so well when you new world. That'd be too much panic and too, we're creatures of comfort. You got to slow walk us there.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, slow walk across. So what we're seeing is just for the sake of continuity, we're seeing the old unraveling so that the foundation of the new can truly be validated and seen. That's where we are right now. But we are nonetheless a 4D species right now, walking a bridge towards a 5D reality. So then what's 5D? 5D is where unity consciousness happens, where acceptance happens, where inclusion happens. So now in 5D, remember 3D, you had the black or white kind of mentality. In 4D, you had black and white kind of mentality. In 5D, you've got the amalgamation of the two. So you begin to see they are both equal aspects of the one divine creator.
Yeah.
In 5D, rather than judgment being the glue of 5D, acceptance is the glue of 5D. So it would be, I see your perspective over there, I'm simply not aligned to it. I am more aligned to this perspective. It's not a fight, and it's not you're wrong for believing this, and how could you, and how dare you, and I'm offended. It's none of that. It's an acceptance of, oh, I see that you're doing this. I see you walking that path. How interesting.
Yeah.
Good for you. But this is where I'm orientated.
Another way to explain what you just shared is in 3D, I support Mr. Trump, you support Biden, you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Right? That you can see the polarization of thought. Whereas in 5D thinking, it can be, we disagree on this topic. I appreciate the conversation. Let's park that and talk about something else, because the relationship is more valuable than the different perspective that might be sitting over there. And also to be more in the world, but not of it, right? Where you're more of an observer of the polarity of folks that might still be operating, because even though we've moved into fourth dimensional for a period of time, we're still going to have a little bit of 3D operating with 5D on the same planet for a while, right? With that,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the way that I would see it is using that example of Trump and Biden. It's a good example because it's so relevant for everyone. In 3D, it's Trump or Biden. Make your choice. And if you choose the wrong team, then I'm not going to love you anymore. That's that kind of polarity. In 4D, we can say, oh, look, there's Trump and Biden, which means I've got less hate. I've got less of an opposition. I can now begin to see that there are those people that align themselves with Trump. There are those that align themselves with Biden. And both are okay. Both are okay. That begins in 4D. Then by the time you get to 5D, it's not about Trump or Biden anymore. It's about, I see the political system. In other words, I can see the whole picture. So I'm no longer looking at the individual players from a 5D perspective. From a 5D perspective, I can see the system and what the system represents. And I can say the system works for me or the system doesn't work for me. But you would no longer see, your focus wouldn't be on the individual players. Your focus would be, how could we overhaul the system so that it works for all people or creates more equality or whatever it might be. 5D is a truly different perspective. And the higher into 5D octaves you go, the deeper into acceptance you go. So there isn't even a abrasiveness when somebody has a contrasting viewpoint. There's just an acceptance and there's a lot of curiosity. So when I deal with 5D galactics, instead of them interjecting with what we would call judgment, like, how can you humans do this? How can you believe that? What they have is genuine curiosity. And it's like curiosity, for example, wow, you guys really believe that? How is that possible? Mind blow, you know? It's almost like a child looking at the world for a first time and going, what? Are you serious? Is that how you guys think of it? Is that what people believe? So it's not a judgment. It's a genuine curiosity. That's more of the 5D perspective. Everything begins to look like an aspect of the whole in a 5D perspective.
Yeah, and we certainly don't treat each other the way that's happening in 3D. And what allows it is once you cross that bridge from 3D and 5 is because you've chosen to know thyself, go within, open up the heart, merge with the soul, the spirit, work proactively with the spirit, the soul, which opens up even your idea of who you are and who you connect with, who you can talk to, being God, the Galactics, our spiritual fam jam. And that changes your whole, that changes your entire experience. So why wouldn't, like I would say that as soon as you open your heart and work with the heart, that's when you allow magic and miracles to be a part of your everyday experience. Instead of being pummeled by the 3D reality, which pushes shit at you so that the ego is in reaction mode all the time, pause, go within the heart. Now I'm creating proactively with my imagination and my open heart and my soul team the reality that I really want to experience. So let's talk about the spiritual leadership on the planet, not necessarily an individual, but a collective of people that know who they are, that have opened their hearts and are claiming the higher octave reality for humanity. Because it feels to me like we're at a point in 2021, it's no longer about what you want individually. It's about what can I bring for the collective? How do I lift everybody up into a more rich, joyful, heaven on earth kind of experience?
Yeah. There are many beings on planet Earth who've been operating quietly and behind the scenes for what I call the greater good of mankind. I talk about a force of good, knowing that different people have got different names for what that force of good is. You might think of it as the white hats. You might think of it as a group of positively orientated beings of consciousness. Some people refer to them as the original watchers, meaning the original beings of Earth. When they first came into embodiment and saw it was Eden, there were those beings that stayed behind in order to not grow with the rest of the planet, in order to hold and anchor into the planet the memory of Eden, the memory of the original blueprint that this planet was designed to be. So whatever a person might call them, know this, that the group of good that works upon our planet is multidimensional and multi-layered. It is not one set of beings. They are not human only. They are human and galactic beings, a multidimensional force of good that supports the return of this planet to the pure environment that it once was. Because Earth was truly designed to be an Eden, where beings from various star systems could come and experience the many fruits that we had here. And somewhere along the line, that was hijacked. So what's happening right now is the planet is being returned to that seat of purity. And as that happens, the beings upon the planet, who we might call the everyday man on the street, the beings upon this planet get given a choice. And the choice is, do you want to stay on? Do you want to stay on and see this new world into fruition? Or were you aligned with the old world, in which case you're not going to be listening to this, and chances are huge that you're not even going to be present on planet Earth anymore, because what the Galactics have shown me very clearly is that the beings who are present on Earth right now, even if they are negatively polarized, in other words, they have negative viewpoints, they have sinister agendas, if they're alive on planet Earth right now, there's a possibility, not a probability, but a possibility that they would want to orientate themselves to be a part of the new world. Please understand, I'm not saying the new world order, right? The new world, the return of Eden, let's call it that. So the beings upon the planet right now, more than the overall leaders, the beings on the earth right now are given a choice. And the choice is, do you want to participate or not? Now, what most of us don't realize is that we've all been asked that question already. We've all answered that question already. The people that you interact with in your world, whether it seems viable to you or not, have most likely already said yes. If they haven't said yes, then they're choosing to unravel pretty much now as we see the tail end of the collapse of 3D. That's what this is. This is the tail end of the collapse of 3D. So that force of good upon this planet, that multidimensional, human and intergalactic force of good upon this planet, is tasked with the job of restoring planet Earth to the original template, the original blueprint. We've all agreed to come along for the ride or to participate in this repopulation of Eden. There was a time, and this was around about the 80s, there was a time where it looked like that wasn't going to work. There was a time where it looked like the only viable solution was to have some kind of cataclysmic event to end life on planet Earth that would have taken place in 2012, and then we could start fresh, we could start anew.